Dave Hall. Dave Hall, our prospect guy. Dave, before we get to prospects and stuff, actually, it's okay. Do you want to comment on the EP40 stuff? Because I'm fired up about it, man, and I'm sure you've heard some of what I've said.
No, we can move. I think I agree with you guys. I think it's misconstrued, and we can move on. I agree with what you say.
All right, I love it. All right, I wanted to ask you about Vasily Podkozlin. It was wondered by our colleague at CanucksArmy, Stefan Roger, today, if the Canucks should make an in-season call-up for their top six rather than looking on the trade market. And Vasily Podkozlin was one example that was brought up. My first question is, how is Podkolzin doing? And my second question is, do you think there is anybody in Abbotsford that could be a legitimate top six upgrade that they could call up right now?
Well, I think I'll answer the second one first. My short answer is no. I think there's two different questions here, right? Like the one you're asking is top six, and there's, can anyone come up and play in the NHL? And the answer to that is yes, but in the top six, that's just a lot to ask for many of these guys. And I just don't think I've seen anything from any of them that suggests that they could just hop in right now and, in a pretty critical time of the season to play top six. But as for Podkolzin, he's, the first half of the season, it was going pretty well. Between October and December 31st, he had 16 points in 21 games, and that's with a little bit of leeway coming off of a pretty intense head injury. So he was doing pretty well, but in January, he's got 4 points in 10 games, and just overall, he just hasn't really shown anything that could really suggest that he would be able to contribute stepping in the NHL. He's a volume shooter. We love all the shots that he's taking. That hasn't been an issue, but the issue has been his ability to score off those shots. He's the only person in Abbotsford to surpass the 100-point mark. And, a game where we don't see him get 2 shots on net is a rare one, but we haven't seen him score goals from it. So it's one of those things where he's getting a lot of shots, but he just hasn't produced any points. And that's not without trying. Archie Baines has been feeding him for weeks now. And there's been a couple games where he just hasn't been able to put it in the back of net. So that's concerning. And so I think the question, if he can come in and play some low utilized minutes and, do the old Podkolzin thing that we're used to, I think that's one thing. But asking him to come in and play some top six minutes and hope to contribute to this offense is just, it's a little suspect in my opinion.
Sticking to the Abbotsford theme, how has Aatu Räty performed relative to your expectations this year? Looking at the numbers, he's got 23 points in 38 games, which is solid in the sense that it's a type of production that typically leads to a future NHL career. But given that he is 21, it's not the type of production that screams future top six or even necessarily middle six potential. Where are you at with the season as a whole and big picture, the potential of the NHL player he could be one day?
Yeah, it's a great question. And also taking a little back to Podkolzin, that's the exact same thing, right? Like his numbers are fine, but in terms of that elite prospect that we're hoping for, it's just not really up to snuff. And it's the same with Aatu Räty. There's been flashes where I think it was in mid-season where he was moved to the wing and he had that line going with Max Sasson and Linus Karlsson, and he looked fantastic. But the issue was that he wasn't really the one driving the play. And so as much as I've liked a lot of his game, he's got really good vision. He's been utilizing a lot of quick passes. He's been on the power play, which isn't really saying much for Abbotsford these days. But there are elements that we like in his game. But I just think overall, the thing that really concerns me is his future projectable center position. I just don't. His skating just really concerns me, and it's more just the fact that it's gotten a lot better since last year, but it still feels like he's still trying to catch up all the time. And in most of the games I've seen, I find he's more productive when he's on the wing, which I know this isn't what everyone wants to hear, but just for me, I just feel like he's been much more productive on the wing. And so I would think that would be kind of the way we're going with this. But overall, I just haven't really seen anything in his game to suggest that he can hop in either this year. Next year, who knows? But right now, he's not driving plays and he's not really scoring any goals that would suggest that he could do that, especially in the top six role in the NHL right now.
All right, so Archie Baines is another name. Obviously, we ask you about him every week, but Danila Klimovich scores a couple goals. I've been reading the Farm East, Dave. Danila Klimovich scoring a couple goals. What should we make of his season at this point? Because it feels like it's been up and down. We know there was an injury. What can you tell us about Danila Klimovich?
At this point, in my opinion, I just don't think you can really take too much into anything that's happened this season. It's been so tough for him. You know, he's been battling injuries. When he's not battling injuries, he's battling healthy scratches. When he is in the lineup, he's getting fourth line minutes. Even now, he's got goals in back-to-back games, and he's still not getting a ton of minutes. So there's just not a lot there to really go off of anything. I think right now, as much as I hate to say it, it's just more of let's get him back on track. Let's get that confidence going. And just let's hope that we can have a better second half, because it's just been tough. One thing that I would really like is to see him just slot in on the power play at some moment, because Klimovich is playing his best hockey when he's not only forward checking, but when he's taking shots. And he's just not really getting that chance to take a lot of shots right now. And their power play is worse in the league, and it's embarrassing at this point. So at this point, they should probably be trying something. And I'd love to just see him get a moment up on the power play just to try to get some confidence going, because it's been inconsistent to say the least.
Jonathan Lekkerimäki has continued picking up points since returning from a fantastic World Junior Championship performance. What do you think is a realistic NHL timeline for him? I'm sort of looking at him, and in my initial sense, of course, not knowing nearly as much as you do, is I'm sort of looking at him and going, probably best served in Abbotsford next year, but has an outside shot of maybe doing the Höglander thing, of maybe surprising and playing some NHL games, but more realistically that the year after you've got a serious shot of him developing into an NHL player. What type of timeline do you expect for Lekkerimäki?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Right after the World Juniors, I wrote a bit of a post World Juniors piece on just what to expect, and that's pretty much my outline. I know that right now we're kind of, we're looking for that top six immediate solve it from within, but I just don't see that happening. And I think the realistic timeline, let's see how it goes next year. I'd said around Christmas, around right now is when you can start to take a look at, how its first half has been, how the Canucks are looking, is it worth it? But I just don't really see the point in trying to speed up the process. At this point, he's had a really good season, but there's still so much to learn and translate over to the North American game. So at this point, let's get him over. Let's have a good summer of development, really close with the Canucks development team, get him over in Abbotsford, and just see where we go in Christmas. Hopefully he just translates seamlessly and we have him up scoring goals at the NHL level by January next year. But I just think it's more realistic to probably give him that wiggle room.
Dave, great stuff as always. Thanks so much for joining us, man. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Have a good day.
Canucks Conversation with Harman and Quads every weekday at 2 p.m. Be sure to check it out on the CanucksArmy YouTube channel. And if you missed it, go check it out on your favorite podcast catcher app.